got some breaking news for you Vikings fans, as they have actually just signed a quarterback and waived, in a pretty shocking move, Jaren Hall. What's going on, everybody? Welcome in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman. Coming up on today's show, telling you guys all about the quarterback that the Vikings just signed, and then also giving you guys my thoughts on the Jaren Hall waiving move made by this front office as a bit of a shocker to me, as they did keep him on the final 53-man roster. I thought that was a huge indication that they were a big fan of his and maybe looked at him as a developmental backup quarterback. But I guess I was wrong on there. So the Vikings sign a quarterback. But before we dive into that, guys, make sure you guys are subscribed here to the channel. Anytime we get breaking news around your favorite football team, we'll have video for you guys ASAP. So hit that subscribe button and help us reach 29,000 subs here on the channel. So the quarterback the Vikings just signed, Brett Rypien, former Bears preseason legend, and he actually had a great preseason for Chicago. In 4 games played, he was 24 of 34, went for 335 yards, had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he also had a quarterback rating of 131.4. Brett Rypien, he reminds me of that style of quarterback of like a Taylor Heineke, kind of like a Bailey Zappi in that backyard mold where, they play better out of structure in comparison to playing in structure. But Rypien is a baller. He's got some, he's got some juice to him. He can move outside the pocket. Obviously, this is not a guy who is even going to come in and compete for the quarterback 2 spot with Nick Mullens. But I think Rypien's going to offer you, a more serviceable option if, like, the worst case scenario happened and Sam Darnold gets hurt and then Nick Mullens goes in here and let's just say either, he ends up getting injured or he just ends up playing terrible football. But Brett Rypien played his college or his collegiate football at the University of, I just had it pulled up here, but the University of Boise State, actually, back in 2018. Then he did go undrafted, and then he was picked up by the Bears, and he actually had a pretty good preseason. He was duking it out for that quarterback 2 battle in Chicago, ended up losing that, and then the Bears ended up waiving him yesterday, but then the Vikings saw a chance to go pick up a guy they liked, and I guess that guy is Brett Rypien. Now, he is 28 years old. He started off his first 4 seasons in the NFL playing for the Denver Broncos. He did actually start 3 games for Denver, and then he moved to Los Angeles and played with the Rams in 2023. So that kind of makes sense. In 2023, it was Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell. Or Kevin O'Connell wasn't with the Rams staff in 2023, but we know KOC, very good friends with Sean McVay, so maybe he called him up and he said, hey, what are your thoughts on Rypien? And maybe Sean McVay gave him some love there in comparison to the love that they had for Jaren Hall. But, it's still looking like that Sam Darnold will obviously be the week 1 starting quarterback, and now I think it's even more certain that Nick Mullens will be quarterback too. But GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is scheduled to speak to local reporters later today, so I'm sure he's going to get asked about the Jaren Hall move as well. But if you look at the Vikings quarterbacks that they have brought in total this offseason, like you lose Kirk Cousins to the Falcons in free agency. You didn't want to, pay him the money that he wanted. Then you sign Sam Darnold. And then you go draft J.J. McCarthy. He has a season-ending injury. Then you bring in Matt Corral. He plays a couple snaps in the preseason. You waive him, and then you add Jaren Hall to your final 53-man roster. Then you waive him, and now you go get a guy like Brett Rypien. I just think it's very interesting. I don't really know the rhyme or reason for this, because you would think out of your quarterback 3 spot, you would want a guy that's got, maybe more upside than a guy who's already proven. And I think Rypien is a more proven commodity in the NFL than Jaren Hall. But even though Jaren Hall is already 25 years old, he's still entering his 2nd year. I thought he had more potential than a guy like Rypien does. But Rypien, in the 1 season, he did start 3 games for the Denver Broncos. He went 27 of 40 that year, a 67.5 completion percentage, only threw for 295 yards in 3 games, and he had 2 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So clearly he hasn't had that much success in the NFL just yet. He obviously played his best football of his career this past preseason with the Bears. It's just very interesting that they decided to cut Jaren Hall for this move. We talked about it on the channel yesterday about potentially trading for a guy like Jameis Winston or some other backup quarterbacks the Vikings could bring in, but I think they are very confident in the 3 people they have now of Sam Darnold, Mullens, and now Brett Rypien being the newest member of this group. So you guys let me know, did this move shock you? Down in the comment section, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Now, coming up next, I do want to talk about just Jaren Hall and just speak more to why I think this was an absolute shocking move that he ended up getting waived after he played some of his best ball in the preseason. But before we dive into that, I do want to give a huge shout out on today's show to today's sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. If you guys head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 and use code VikingsChat50, you will get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. Again, that's code VikingsChat50 at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50. We'll hook you guys up with 50% off your first box and then also 20% off your next month while your subscription is still active. But Factor, it offers you 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every single week, so you'll always have new flavors to explore. Crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. And you can also make your entire day sponsored by Factor. From breakfast to dessert, stay fueled easy with nutritious options. And you can also treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. So head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 and use code VikingsChat50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. One more time, that's code VikingsChat50 at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Shout out to Factor for sponsoring today's show. I use them every single day. Trust me, you guys will too. Hit that link in the comment section and description and give them a chance. So let's close out today's show just talking about Jaren Hall. As you know, this was a shocking move to me. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, after the last two preseason games, him going 4 or 5 against the Browns for 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he obviously played a great game against the Eagles, finding the end zone 2 times, went over 150 yards in the first half, and he was incredibly accurate throughout that game. And I thought finally we saw, you know, some of the juice from Jaren Hall. Like, if you look to what he did this past season, you know, he only got 1 spot start and he got pulled at halftime. But you just never saw any potential. You never saw any juice out of that performance. But finally this preseason, you saw it. You saw the live arm. You saw the arm angles. You could see that he has a big enough arm to touch almost every blade of grass on the football field. And then you go waive him after the best performances you have seen from him. I was just a little confused on this move. Like, obviously, they see him every day at practice. They know what he's about inside and outside of that locker room. So maybe they just didn't view it as a good fit with the Minnesota Vikings, but there is no doubt that this move completely shocked me this morning. I thought the only move we could see in terms of the Vikings adding a quarterback were to trade for a guy like Jameis Winston. And, you know, I'm still in the camp. If, let's just say, something happens to Sam Darnold, either injury or he ends up playing terrible to start this upcoming year, I would still be all in on trading for a guy like Jameis Winston in comparison to rolling out a guy like Nick Mullens or Brett Rypien. Because, you know, at least Jameis has done it in the NFL. He's shown he can be a starting caliber, you know, quarterback, whether that is in the bottom 5 of starting quarterbacks in the league. He has still gone out there, and he's shown an ability to produce. A guy like Nick Mullens, a guy like Brett Rypien, really hasn't shown that just yet. So if the Vikings make any more moves at the quarterback position, I'm assuming it's going to be for a bigger name like a Jameis Winston or even maybe a guy like Mac Jones. Probably should have talked about him on the channel yesterday, but a guy who can just, you know, very similar to, I guess I can make the example of, he's like a more controlled than Nick Mullens, where he's not going to take the crazy chances Mullens does, but he doesn't have the big enough arm either. He'll just take the check down, so be a very vanilla quarterback, but maybe that's a guy the Vikings look to as well. But still a very interesting move today, but I want to get you guys the news there. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Help us reach 29,000 subscribers, and we'll see you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.